Hello again. Today I want to talk about an interesting phrasal verb, break out. Students often find the phrasal verbs to be a little confusing because when you take a verb and add a preposition, very often you end up with a meaning that you wouldn't guess from the combination of elements. So let's take a look at this expression, break out. I feel like there are several things that break out. Fires break out. Wars break out. Epidemics break out. Epidemics break out. Fires, wars, epidemics, fights break out. Fights. Fights break out. So essentially, it's just a way to say that something began. So you might read in the news, last night, a fire broke out in a warehouse downtown. And you could just as easily say a fire started in a warehouse. It broke out. Either one is acceptable, but this seems like a very common colloquial way to describe a fire starting. Unfortunately, wars break out, and so you might have somebody say, if they speak English well, I left my country just before the war broke out. So sometimes, as an ESL teacher, I will see students from countries where there's war going on, and perhaps someone studying in my class would tell me this. I might ask them, was it difficult to get out of your country when the war started? And he might say, no, I could tell that the country was headed toward war, so I left my country just before the war broke out, so just before the war started. Here's a common thing that people joke about. I went to a hockey game last night and a fight broke out. So they fight a lot in hockey. I don't know if you know much about the sport, but it's kind of a rough sport. Guys run into each other, and sometimes they just drop their stick and just start punching one another. So I went to a hockey game last night and a fight broke out. A war, a fight, a fire, a disease, a pandemic. You know, interestingly, with a disease, there is a noun, outbreak, an outbreak. And so it seems more likely to use the noun. There was an outbreak of malaria in the village. Several people died after an outbreak of malaria. That might be a headline. Several people died in the village after, let me see, a malaria outbreak. You could say it that way, an outbreak of malaria, a malaria outbreak. So it's the same concept. Here it's a noun, but I probably wouldn't say after malaria broke out. I suppose you could. It sounds a little unusual. More likely, after a malaria outbreak. Interestingly, break out does have a literal meaning. You can break out of jail. So you might hear on the news something like this: a dangerous criminal broke out of I'm going to hyphenate it. I'm not going to look up. I'm not sure that should be hyphenated. A dangerous criminal broke out of a high security detention facility this morning. So they might tell you be on the lookout. So keep your eyes open, watch out. But you can break out of jail. If you're in jail, you literally break something and escape. So that would be the synonym. But I think it's probably more common to hear it used in the other instances of a war, a fire. Interestingly, you might hear a teenager say, I avoid chocolate because it makes me break out. And this is a reference to acne. So you can have pimples, acne, little pimples. I guess it's kind of like an explosion. They do, in a sense, kind of break out of your skin, right? So yeah, chocolate makes me break out. So I avoid chocolate. I'll get acne. And that's a fairly common thing to hear. Break out. So let me review those quickly. Last night, a fire broke out in a warehouse downtown. Very common sentence. I left my country just before the war broke out. I went to a hockey game last night and a fire broke out. Several people died in the village after a malaria outbreak. A dangerous criminal broke out of a high security detention facility this morning. Be on the lookout. And finally, avoid chocolate because it makes me break out. All right, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you another time.